Hello, you absolute legends. The Sid Meier's Civilization franchise is one of, if not the most important and influential video game series in the turn-based war strategy genre. Every game since Civ 1 from 1991 has been simply amazing, and the latest in the series, Civ 6, released in 2016, is arguably the greatest and deepest yet. People really love this game, and it appeals to a certain type of gamer. Not to overgeneralize too much, but in my opinion, Civilization is a thinking man's game. There are a lot of moving parts to consider, and there is a lot you need to learn if you want to have any semblance of competency, especially when versing other players instead of just the computer. Civ 6 is such a beloved game that even without any first-party support from developers, there still exist huge self-governed communities that facilitate constant multiplayer competition. For example, the Civ Players League, or CPL, is the main league for English-speaking players. The CPL has thousands of players, and it's where anyone serious about the game competes against other people. The CPL has strict rules that players need to obey in order to keep their access to the league. This ensures competition remains fair and healthy, and it stops issues that might arise from random public lobbies like people quitting games or trolling. It even has a competitive leaderboard which ranks players using the true skill rating system, similar to the ELO rating in chess. And for the past few years, one player has remained completely dominant on the ranks, holding the #1 position by a huge margin. This was a player by the name of Andrew, and last month, Andrew was banned by the CPL for cheating. Now I know what you're all thinking. Who would cheat in a game like Civilization? This game is sacred. Cheating is nothing short of blasphemy. You would have to be a real sicko to cheat in such a beautiful game. But it's true. Andrew had been cheating for years, and Andrew was the worst kind of cheater too. He was the kind of cheater who always bragged about being the best, who did everything he could, no matter how unsportsmanlike, just to get an edge. And when he was exposed, he lied and tried to deceive people in order to cover his tracks. He even resorted to filing a false copyright takedown against the video that exposed his cheating to the public. In today's video, we will take a look at Andrew, the biggest cheater in Civ 6 history, and I think you'll be shocked at the lengths Andrew has gone to in order to try and hide the truth. It's honestly one of the craziest responses I've ever seen. I really hope you enjoy. Now legends, I absolutely love cereal, and I know you do too. But let's be honest, if you're someone like me who works out and wants to look as good as they can, the standard high-sugar cereal just doesn't fit into our diet. But thankfully, that doesn't mean we have to give up cereal forever, and that's where today's sponsor Magic Spoon comes in. Magic Spoon is a high-protein and zero-sugar cereal. It's specifically made for people like you and me who want to look really good and who value their health, but they don't want to give up the naughty things in life like cereal. I can fit Magic Spoon easily into my lifestyle because of its macros. One serving contains 13 grams of protein, 4 grams of carbs, and again, no sugar. I usually eat Magic Spoon before bed or as a snack between meals. This really helps me stick to my diet. Magic Spoon also offer treats which are really tasty. These are honestly the best tasting high-protein snacks I've ever had. Definitely give Magic Spoon a try, and they are so confident they offer a 100% money-back guarantee if you are not happy. There are a ton of flavors to choose from, and you'll need to try them all to make sure you find the ones you most enjoy. So just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and use code LEGEND to get $5 off your order today. You can also grab Magic Spoon on Amazon or at your nearest grocery store. When it comes to the details of exactly how Andrew was cheating and the methods that were used to expose him, I'm going to be giving you the broad strokes. If you want a really thorough breakdown of Andrew's cheating and a deeper analysis, I recommend a fantastic video by the Civ 6 YouTuber Herson. There is a lot of skill when it comes to player v player competition in Civ 6, but there are a few luck factors that can impact the game in a pretty significant way. When you start a game, the map is covered in a fog of war, which means that scouting is critical. Scouting isn't just important for locating enemies and finding resources, but in the early game especially, it can provide a huge benefit if you are the first person to discover certain structures. For example, the first person to reach a tribal village will get a random reward, and tribal villages are scattered randomly over the map. Or you could be the first person to find one of the computer-controlled civilizations, which also provides you a bonus. The key though is that these rewards are only granted to the first player who finds them, and these rewards can be pretty substantial. This is why early game scouting is such an important skill, and it's a skill that's made a bit more complex because the map terrain will affect how fast scouting units can move. For example, units move twice as fast over flat terrain than they do over hills. So if you want to scout as many tiles as you can, as quickly as you can, you would generally avoid going over hills unnecessarily and stick to the flat terrain as much as possible. There are well-established best practices that top players use to expose the maximum amount of tiles in the shortest amount of time, so they increase their chances of finding these important structures first. Which means it's quite obvious to top players when someone is scouting based on the terrain and uncovering the fog of war, or if they are just moving directly towards structures because they can see them. And this is exactly how the biggest cheater in Civ 6 history was caught. Andrew had been ranked number 1 for years, and from what I can gather, he had already been a rather unsportsmanlike player. For example, he would specifically target lobbies with weaker players and avoid stronger players because he really wanted to come first in every game. In fact, a lobby full of novice players even had a special nickname within the community, named after Andrew. Sometimes if a game wasn't going well, he would fake technical difficulties and cause the game to end early. This is of course against the rules, but he would rather take a short suspension from the league than lose a game. Multiple times, brand new rules had to be created specifically because Andrew was abusing certain features in an unsportsmanlike way in order to gain an advantage. Andrew was obsessed with his ranking and would do anything, no matter how distasteful, to keep his number 1 position. This is why Andrew wasn't the most well-liked Civ 6 player in the league, and while people had accused him of outright cheating in the past, nothing ever came of it. This is because previous complaints were never substantiated with evidence, which you need if you want to accuse someone of cheating. This all changed, however, in August, when Andrew played a game against one of the CPL moderators named Herson. In that game, Andrew performed uncharacteristically poor, and he ended up complaining to Herson that he placed so low because he had such a bad spawn location. This prompted Herson to watch a replay of the game just out of curiosity, and this is what is so ironic about how Andrew's cheating was discovered. Andrew wasn't exposed because the moderators proactively looked at his games because they thought he was cheating. No, the only reason a moderator looked at his game at all was because Andrew was complaining and making excuses for why he didn't win. When the moderator Herson looked at Andrew's moves at the start of the game, which of course you need to do in order to figure out how unlucky Andrew got, he was shocked. It was immediately apparent that Andrew's scouting made no sense, and it was immediately apparent that Andrew was cheating. In order to study previous games and examine the actions of each player, Civ 6 players use a program called Civ Replay. The game data is stored on the computer of every player as a save file, which is then loaded by the player into Civ Replay to look at the game. Once a save file is loaded into Civ Replay, the player gets access to every piece of information, including player moves and of course the entire map. An issue arises, however, because the save file is generated on the very first move of each game. So theoretically, if you took that save file and loaded it into Civ Replay immediately, you would have vision of the entire map straight away. This is a problem, but Civ Replay does include some checks to try and make this difficult to do. For example, Civ Replay won't open a save file that is less than 30 minutes old. Also, Civ Replay won't run on a computer that has an instance of Civ 6 currently running. And if the computer is connected to the internet, it will automatically send a log to the Civ Replay server, which could be checked later. However, all of these anti-cheat measures can be overcome if someone is determined enough. For example, they could be running Civ Replay through a virtual machine which has the date set into the future and isn't connected to the internet. This is one method Andrew could have used. However, Andrew is also a programmer, so for all we know he could have modified Civ Replay to remove these hurdles directly. Whatever the case, we do know that Andrew was cheating by gaining vision of the entire map from the very first move. Herson, along with other moderators, began studying Andrew's games, and every single time his units in the early game moved perfectly towards those important structures. Every single time his movement was as optimal as you could possibly get, even if you had full vision of the entire map. The odds of Andrew getting lucky in this way are so low that we are reaching dream levels of luck. And even that wouldn't explain the fact that Andrew was going against almost every principle of early game scouting in order to find things quickly. For example, he would travel over hills when there were flat plains available to traverse, which makes no sense whatsoever. But every time Andrew did this, a tribal village or some other important location was just over the horizon. It's almost comical how obvious Andrew's cheating is when you actually take the time to observe his games. And that's really the unfortunate truth about catching cheaters. Moderation isn't a paid job, and most people just want to have fun and play the game. They aren't going through other people's games in their spare time time, especially when each game in Civ 6 lasts for hours. Andrew's cheating is ridiculously blatant if you're looking for it, but if you're not specifically searching for foul play, it can and did go under the radar for years. After several weeks of investigation, the moderators finally banned Andrew from the CPL. But Andrew didn't take this lying down. A couple of weeks later, he released a 42-page Google Doc trying to argue that he has some kind of magical method for scouting. This was accompanied by another 100-page document which included breakdowns of a few of his games. But these documents were full of misdirection and lies. He would post a screenshot showing the path of one of his early game scouts and straight up claim that it found nothing. This was in order to try and show that his scouting wasn't perfect and thus he wasn't cheating. But when the actual game replay was checked, it showed that he had indeed found tribal villages. What Andrew did was take a screenshot of the map after the villages were already claimed, so they didn't show up. And then he lied and said they never existed. This deception strategy would work on a lot of people because the only way you could verify this to see if it were true was if you had the save file of that particular game. But only the players who played that game have the save file, so everyone else has no means with which to test Andrew's claims. In response to this deception being exposed, Andrew moved the goalposts and claimed that while he did actually find a tribal hut, he didn't get it in the most efficient manner and therefore couldn't have been cheating. But Andrew's explanation ignores one crucial piece of the cheating pie. It's the fact that Andrew would prioritize huts that were contested. In other words, he would always go after huts that he thought could be taken by another player first. If he thought a hut wasn't in danger of being taken by someone else, such as this example here where it's tucked away in the corner of the map, he would leave it until last. This ensures he captures the most amount of huts possible and limits the amount of huts other players can find. This is the most optimal way to play if you have full knowledge of the map. Andrew's document was full of ridiculous red herrings that made no sense. For example, he makes the claim that tribal villages form predictable patterns if you know the shape of the map. I guess in order to argue that he uses these patterns somehow to find huts perfectly. He then ran multiple simulations showing different possible distributions. He would then look for the one simulation that was closest to a real game and then compare them to show how similar they were. Aside from how stupid cherry-picking one simulation is on its face, he never actually shows how he applies this to a real game or explains how it works in practice. And this idea just couldn't work, even in theory, because when you start a game, you don't know what the shape of the map is. This is something you realize later in the game after you've done your scouting. And really, that's what most of this document is. Vague principles to confuse lesser experienced players with no real proven practical value. But what I found most shocking is how much effort Andrew put into these documents, which just end up being total lies. This is so much work, it's honestly crazy. And things get even crazier after Herson released his video about Andrew, explaining everything in great detail. This video is fantastic. It's professional and explains everything in a very respectful and informative way. Andrew wasn't happy, however, and several days after the video was released, he submitted a false copyright claim on the video to take it down. Thankfully, Herson did manage to get the video back up, and he was happy to provide me the notice Andrew sent to YouTube. For context, all Herson did was show some brief clips from a couple of games that Andrew had streamed on his Twitch channel. These were games that lasted for hours, and Herson barely used a few minutes of footage, which was all essential to demonstrate the cheating. In his claim to YouTube, Andrew lied and said that Herson used substantial portions, including key highlight moments that Andrew had curated as central to his brand and content. He also states the video contained false and misleading claims and is therefore defamation. However, as we all know, the copyright system is designed for breaches of copyright, not to take down videos you disagree with. Honestly, this notice is just very childish in nature. It says the video states unequivocally that I am cheating, while the actual outcome was inconclusive. This is obviously untrue if you've seen the video. The actual outcome was as conclusive as you could possibly get. At the end, Andrew says that he is prepared to pursue further legal action should this content remain accessible. This is Billy Mitchell 2.0. Aside from Billy Mitchell and Todd Rogers, this is the worst response to getting caught cheating I've ever seen. Comparing it to something like the Dream situation doesn't really do it justice. Yes, Dream also did hire an astrophysicist and make his own counter document just like Andrew, but he never copyright struck anyone or threatened to sue them. And it makes more sense for Dream to put a lot of effort into protecting his brand because his brand is worth millions of dollars. Andrew, on the other hand, wrote a 140-page document full of lies, submitted a false copyright takedown of the video that exposed him, and is now threatening to sue the moderator who made the video video because he was banned from a Discord server. These aren't the actions of a healthy individual, and I will definitely be keeping a lookout to see if he does end up taking some kind of legal action in the future. In the meantime, go and watch Herson's video which goes over Andrew's cheating in more detail, and subscribe to his channel if you are a fan of Civ 6. Thank you so much for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.